Hi, this is Dr. Bev Knox, your psychology exam study buddy. In this episode, we will be reviewing the topic of drugs and consciousness. As you know, in one episode, I go over fully the definitions and things you need to know to ace your psychology exam. And in the following episode, I usually go over actual questions and answers of psychology exam quizzes, real quizzes, yes, from a psych bank, okay? All right, so let's get started with drugs and consciousness. The first thing I want to do is to review the definition of a psychoactive drug. It is a chemical substance that alters perceptions and moods. Now, don't forget, I'm going to be repeating myself time and time again in hopes to transfer the information that you're hearing from me right now into your long-term memory, okay? Alrighty, so let's dive into this topic in a little bit more detail. We're going to be learning about tolerance and addiction in substance use disorders. Now, let's imagine a day in the life of a legal drug user. It begins with a wake-up latte. By midday, several cigarettes have calmed frazzled nerves before an appointment at the plastic surgeon's office for wrinkle smoothing Botox injections. An afternoon energy drink provides a needed boost. A diet pill before dinner helps curb the appetite. Later, a beer and 2 Advils PMs help offset those stimulating effects. And if performance needs enhancing, there are beta blockers for on-stage performers. Now, Viagra for middle-aged and older men, and Adderall for students hoping to focus their concentration. Oh my goodness, what a story, what a story. Such substances are called psychoactive drugs, and they are chemicals that change perceptions and moods. Answer this question for me. What is a psychoactive drug? Yes, you are correct. Psychoactive drugs are chemicals that change perception and moods. Most of us manage to use some psychoactive drugs in moderation and without disrupting our lives. But sometimes drug use crosses the line between moderation and substance use disorder. Now, what exactly is substance use disorder? Well, it is a disorder characterized by continued substance craving and use despite significant life disruption and or physical risk. What is a substance use disorder? It is a disorder characterized by continued substance craving and use despite significant life disruption and or physical risk. What is substance use disorder? That's right. It is a disorder characterized by continued substance craving and use despite significant life disruption and or physical risk. Now, when is a drug use a disorder? Well, as stated, according to the American Psychiatric Association, a person may be diagnosed with substance use disorder when drug use continues despite significant life disruption. Resulting brain changes may persist after quitting use of the substance, thus leading to stronger cravings when exposed to people and situations that trigger memories of drug use. The severity of substance use disorder varies from mild, which is like 2 to 3 of the indicators, which I'll review in a minute. The severity of substance use disorders, again, varies from mild to severe. And I'm going to go over a few of these characteristics. So, diminished control would be the person uses more substance or for longer than intended. They try unsuccessfully to regulate use of the substance. They spend too much time acquiring, using, or recovering from the effects of the substance. And also, they crave the substance. So all these are found under diminished control. Then you have diminished social functioning, which is they use the drug, but the use of the drug disrupts commitments at work, school, or home. They continue the use of the drug despite having lots and lots of social problems. And this causes a reduced social, recreational, and work activities. So again, these 3 fall under diminished social functioning. Now we move on to hazardous use. They continue the use of this drug despite hazards. And they continue the use despite worsening physical or psychological problems. This falls under hazardous use. Now, let's review drug action. So, there are experiences of tolerance, meaning they need more and more of that particular substance to receive the desired effect. And also experiences withdrawal when attempting to end the use of that drug. So that's the underneath the drug action. So let's go over some definitions now, okay? So tolerance is the diminishing effect with regular use of the same dose of a drug, requiring the user to take larger and larger doses before experiencing the drug's effect. So when you hear, oh, this person's body has built up a tolerance for this drug, it just means that the person taking the same amount of drug, the effect has been diminished and they need more and more of that drug to experience that same high. So in regards to drinking, for example, in regards to tolerance in drinking, with continued use of alcohol and some other drugs, but not for marijuana, okay? Users develop tolerance as their brain chemistry adapts to offset the drug effect. To experience the same effect, users require larger and larger doses, okay, which increase the risk of becoming addicted and developing a substance use disorder. Now, this is definitely on any psych quiz when it comes to drugs and consciousness, the definition of tolerance. And you have to be very mindful with this definition, okay? Because the user, when the body has developed a tolerance of whatever drug. The user needs to take a larger dose of that drug. They need to take more and more of that drug to pretty much get the same high, okay? All right, so that is tolerance. Now, addiction. Let's talk about addiction. Addiction is pretty much caused by ever increasing doses of most psychoactive drugs, and that includes prescription painkillers also. This prompts the user to crave the drug, to continue use despite adverse consequences, and to struggle when attempting to withdraw from it. These behaviors suggest a substance use disorder. Once in the grip of addiction, people want the drug more than they like the drug. So, the definition of withdrawal, let's talk about that. The discomfort that distresses the individual. So, withdrawal is the discomfort and distress that follow discontinuing an addictive drug or behavior. What is withdrawal? It is the discomfort and distress that follow discontinuing an addictive drug or behavior. So we spoke about what withdrawing from addiction is. Now, therapy or group support, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, may help. It also helps to believe that addictions are controllable and that people can change. Many people do voluntarily stop using addictive drugs without any treatment. Most ex-smokers have kicked the habit on their own, but a lot of people do need support and do need therapy. Okay, behavior addictions. Psychologists try to avoid using addiction to label driven excessive behaviors such as eating, work, sex, and so forth. You hear it all the time. People say, oh my gosh, this person, is addicted to working out or addicted to eating or, addicted to work, or they have a sex addiction or something to that nature. Some of these behaviors can become compulsive and dysfunctional, similar to problematic alcohol and drug use. Behavior addictions include like gambling disorder. Internet gaming disorder has been proposed for future study. Some internet users display an apparent inability to resist logging on and staying on, even when this excessive use impairs their work and relationships. Psychological and drug therapies may be highly effective for problematic internet use. So let's move on to the types of psychoactive drugs. The three major categories of psychoactive drugs are depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. And you need to know this, okay? So again, we're covering the topic of drugs and consciousness, and you need to know these are the three major categories of psychoactive drugs. They are depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. All do their work at the brain's synapses, stimulating, taking control of activities and so forth in the brain. But please note that they have three different type of effects, okay? So let's start up with the depressants. Depressants are drugs such as alcohol, barbiturates, and opioids that reduce neural activity and slow body functions. And the examples that I'm giving you, you need to know because on most exams, they try to trick you a little bit by saying, alcohol is a barbiturate or alcohol is an opioid. And we know that's false because we just stated that alcohol is a depressant. All right. So depressants are drugs such as alcohol, barbiturates, and opioids that reduce neural activity and slow body functions. Okay. So let me give you a little quiz real quick just to test you out. True or false? Are you ready? Okay. Alcohol is a depressant in large amounts, but it is a stimulant in small amounts. True or false? This is false. In any amount, alcohol is a depressant. Low doses of alcohol may indeed leaven a drunkard, but they do so by acting as a disinhibitor. That's right. They slow brain activity that controls judgment. Okay? All right. So, depressants again, drugs such as alcohol, barbiturates, and opioids that reduce neural activity and slow body functions. We spoke a little bit about alcohol use disorder, okay, or substance use disorder. And let's dive into alcohol use disorder. Its popular name is alcoholism, and we've all heard of that name. So the technical definition for alcohol use disorder is alcohol use marked by tolerance, withdrawal, and a drive to continue problematic use. Okay? Alcohol use disorder, popularly known as alcoholism, is alcohol use marked by tolerance, withdrawal, and a drive to continue problematic use. Barbiturates. Let's dive into this definition. Drugs that depress central nervous system activity, reducing anxiety, but impairing memory and judgment. So, like alcohol, the barbiturate drugs or tranquilizers depress the nervous system activity. Barbiturates such as Senecal and Amtal are sometimes prescribed to induce sleep or reduce anxiety. In larger doses, they can impair memory and judgment. If combined with alcohol, as sometimes happens when people take a sleeping pill after an evening of heavy drinking, the total depressive effort on the body functions can be lethal. That's why on many prescription containers or prescription bottles, it says, do not use alcohol when taking this drug. Okay? So what is a barbiturate? Fill in the blank. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer, but I want you to fill in the blank. So barbiturates are drugs that depress what? The central nervous system activity. And what does it reduce? It reduces anxiety, but it impairs what? It impairs memory and judgment. That's right. memory, and judgment. Very good. So let's move on to opiates. So opiates, or opioids as you would hear, are opium and its derivatives such as morphine and heroin. It depresses the neural activity, temporarily lessening pain and anxiety. So again, the opiates is opium and its derivatives also depress neural functioning. Opiates include heroin and also medically prescribed pain relief narcotics such as codeine, morphine, and methadone. And methadone is a synthetic opiate sometimes prescribed as a heroin substitute, trying to get people to withdraw from heroin, so they slowly decrease the use to try to get them to completely stop using. A blissful pleasure replaces pain and anxiety. The user's pupils constrict, breathing slows, and lethargy sets in. Those who become addicted to this short-term pleasure may pay a long-term price. The garden craving for another fix, a need for progressively larger doses as tolerance develops, and the extreme discomfort of withdrawal. Okay, moving right along to stimulants. Stimulants are drugs such as caffeine, nicotine, and the more powerful cocaine. And of course also ecstasy and meth that excite neural activity and speed up body function. So whereas the depressant would reduce neural activity, you have the stimulant that excite the neural activity. Okay? So stimulants are drugs such as caffeine, nicotine, and the more powerful what? Cocaine. And you have meth included in this, and also ecstasy. And what does it do to the neural activity? It excites the neural activity and speed up body functions. Yes, caffeine is a drug, and it is a stimulant. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper. Stimulants does include some of our regular day usage, like caffeine in our coffee, for example, or chocolate, or so forth. People use stimulants to feel alert, lose weight, or boost mood or athletic performance. Some students may resort to stimulants in hopes of boosting their academic performance. Unfortunately, such stimulants offer only modest benefits. Stimulants can also be highly addictive. As you may know, if you are one of the many who use caffeine daily in your coffee, tea, soda, or energy drinks. Cut off from your usual dose and see what happens. Seriously, just stop. I mean, if you're an avid coffee drinker, you drink coffee every single day, maybe 2 or 3 cups a day. Try going 1 day without drinking any coffee. You may crash into fatigue, headaches, irritability, and depression. A mild dose of caffeine typically lasts 3 or 4 hours, which, if taken in the evening, may impair sleep. Okay? So this is definitely on most psychology exams when it comes to caffeine. All right. So please note on my quizzes, all right, there's a question in regards to caffeine, and you have to know that caffeine is the world's mostly used drug. Most people don't see or think of caffeine as a drug because they drink it in the coffee, the candy, the chocolate, you know. But yes, it is a drug, okay? And again, you know, you stop taking it after continued usage, and you do crash into fatigue. And the withdrawal symptoms, because that's what it is, includes headaches, irritability. You get very, very moody, depressed, even. All right? Okay, nicotine. Nicotine cigarettes include your cigarettes, your e-cigarettes, and other tobacco products deliver highly addictive nicotine. Imagine that cigarettes were harmless, except once in every 25,000 packs, an occasional innocent looking one is filled with dynamite instead of tobacco. Not such a bad risk of having had your head blown, but with 250 million packs a day consumed worldwide, we would expect more than 10,000 gruesome daily deaths. Okay, more consumed again worldwide. The lost lives of these dynamite-loaded cigarettes approximate those from today's actual cigarettes. So let's get into this a little bit in regards to definitions. Nicotine is a stimulating and highly addictive psychoactive drug in tobacco. What is nicotine? A stimulating and highly addictive psychoactive drug in tobacco. Moving on to cocaine. Cocaine is a powerful and addictive stimulant derived from the cocoa plant, produces temporarily increased alertness and euphoria. So cocaine is what? It is an addictive stimulant. It is a powerful and addictive stimulant. On my quizzes, I have a true and false in regards to gateway drugs and cocaine. Okay, I'm telling you now, because you're studying with me. I'm your study buddy here. So please note, cocaine is not a gateway drug. That would be false on my quiz. So we know that the definition of a gateway drug is simply a quote-unquote lower level type drug that perhaps would introduce the user to more hardcore drugs. So cocaine is a hardcore drug, okay? Let's just say in regards to alcohol, you probably could see a wine cooler, or even wine could be viewed as a gateway drug because it has a smaller amount of alcohol in it versus drinking vodka straight up on the rocks. You know what I mean? So there's a difference, between a gateway drug and a straight up powerful addictive drug. Okay, so cocaine. What is the definition of cocaine? Yes, a powerful and addictive stimulant derived from what plant? The cocoa plant. It's C-O-C-A plant. It produces temporarily increased alertness. It does. Remember that. Okay, increase alertness. Okay, moving on to methamphetamines. Amphetamines are drugs that stimulate neural activity, causing accelerated body functions and associated energy and mood changes. Now, methamphetamine, aka also known as just meth, is a powerful addictive drug that stimulates the central nervous system with accelerated body functions and associated energy and mood changes. Over time, appears to reduce baseline dopamine levels. And one thing about meth usage, I want you guys to Google before and after pictures of meth use. And you will see people go from average looking, extremely beautiful, very somber looking, very just the average person, clear skin, everything. And within months of usage, some people 6, 8, 10 months, a year, 12 months of usage, and they look like a completely different person, almost zombie-like. I want you to Google before and after pictures of methamphetamine usage. Okay? All right, next, let's move on to ecstasy. Ecstasy is a street name for MDMA. MDMA. So ecstasy is the street name for MDMA. It is a synthetic stimulant and mild hallucinogen. It produces euphoria and social intimacy, but with short-term health risks and longer-term harm to serotonin-producing neurons and to mood and cognition. So what is ecstasy? It is a synthetic stimulant and mild hallucinogen. Let's move on to hallucinogens. What are they? Definitely psychedelic. So, highlight that, write that down because you'll see it on your exam. Psychedelic mind manifesting drugs such as LSD that distort perceptions and evoke sensory images in the absence of sensory input. Really, what does all that mean? Well, let's dive into it a little bit. Hallucinogens distort perceptions and invoke sensory images in the absence of what? Sensory input, which is why these drugs are also called psychedelics, meaning mind manifesting. And again, some such as LSD and MDMA. And do you remember what that is? What's the street name for MDMA? Ecstasy. They are synthetic. Others include the mild hallucinogen, marijuana, and natural substances. Other herb type substances. Whether provoked to hallucinate by drugs, loss of oxygen, or extreme sensory deprivation, the brain hallucinates in basically the same way. Okay? So as the hallucination peaks, people frequently feel separated from their body and experience dreamlike scenes. Their scene of self dissolves, basically, which also dissolves into like border between themselves and the external world. They actually start seeing things and seeing themselves divide. These sensations are strikingly similar to the near-death experience and altered state of consciousness reported by about 10 to 15% of those revived from cardiac arrest. Okay? Okay, so let's move on to marijuana, also known as pot. Also, there's a whole lot of, names, different names for pot. Marijuana, THC, the ganja, whatever, okay? You know what I'm talking about. So, the straight dope on marijuana. Marijuana leaves and flowers contain THC, okay? Whether smoked, get into the brain in about 7 seconds when smoked, or eaten, traveling at a slower, unpredictable rate when eaten, THC produces a mix of effects, okay? It is usually classified as a mild hallucinogen because it amplifies sensitivity to colors, sounds, tastes, and smell. So, in other words, it affects your senses. But like alcohol, marijuana also relaxes the individuals and may produce a euphoric high. So both alcohol and marijuana impair the motor coordination, perception skills, and reaction time necessary for safely operating an automobile, for example. By the way, since marijuana has been legalized in many states, you have a lot of people smoking pot and driving and thinking, oh, it's not like alcohol or anything. I'm not impaired. I just smoked a joint. I'm okay to drive. And that is totally untrue. Totally untrue. Because as the research suggests, both alcohol and pot impair the motor coordination, perceptual skills, and reaction time necessary to safely operate an automobile and other machinery. THC causes animals to misjudge events. All right? So marijuana and alcohol also differ. The body eliminates alcohol within hours. But THC and its byproducts linger in the body for more than a week, which means that regular users experience less abrupt withdrawal and may achieve a high with smaller than usual drug amounts. This is the opposite of typical tolerance, in which repeat users need larger doses to feel the same effect. Okay, so in regards to influences on drug use, okay, drug use by North American youth increased during the 1970s. Then, with increased drug education and a more realistic and deglamorized media depiction of taking drugs, drug use declined sharply, except for a small rise in the mid-1980s. After the early 1990s, the cultural anti-drug voice softened a little bit, and some drugs for a time were again glamorized in music and films. So consider, for example, historical trends in the use of marijuana or pot. In the University of Michigan's annual survey of 15,000 U.S. high school seniors, the proportion who said there is great risk in regular marijuana use rose from 35% in 1978 to 79% in 1991, then retreated to 32% in 2015. Now that's huge. That's huge. And now in 2020 and beyond, now that marijuana use is legal in a lot of states, that number may also decline, perhaps to the single digits. Okay, so some warning signs of alcohol use disorder. Let's go over that. Some warning signs of alcohol use disorder includes drinking binges. And we know what that is, right? Binge drinking larger amounts of alcohol at a time, at one time. Another warning sign of alcohol use disorder is craving the alcohol. I mean, literally, your body is craving the alcohol. Also, its use results in unfulfilled work, school, or home tasks. You're not completing your tasks. You're not completing your work requirements on your job. Also, failing to honor or resolve to drink less. So, you perhaps say, oh, I could control this. I could stop anytime I want. I'm not addicted. I don't have an addiction. I could stop whenever I want. You know what? Just to prove it to you, I'm going to not drink for a week. I'm going to stop drinking right now and won't touch not even a sip of wine for a week. And guess what? They probably could go for a few hours, but by the next day, most likely, they resolve to drinking again. So, failing to honor or resolve to drink less. Continued use despite health risk. So there are some physical health risks involved with continued drug and alcohol use, including severe liver and organ disease. And the person knows that, they have these diseases and disorders, yet they can't help themselves. They continue using the substance regardless. Avoiding family or friends when drinking. So, of course, they have received lots of complaints from their family, friends, and loved ones in regards to their drinking. So, because they can't help themselves and continue to drink, they may sneak alcohol in the house, hide alcohol in cupboards, in the basement, or what have you, and go sneak and drink. And then they may, pretend to be sick or sleeping or something like that to avoid going out with family and or friends when drinking. I just want to go through a little bit about psychological and socio-cultural influences, okay? So please note that sometimes the psychological influence is obvious, okay? Many heavy users of alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine have experienced significant stress or failure and are depressed. Girls with a history of depression, eating disorders, or sexual or physical abuse are at increased risk of problematic substance use. So are youth undergoing school or neighborhood transitions. You have college and university students who have not yet achieved a clear identity are also at greater risk for alcohol or substance use disorder. By temporarily dulling the pain of self-awareness, psychoactive drugs may offer a way to avoid coping with depression anger, anxiety, and insomnia. Now, smoking usually begins early during adolescence. And if you are in college or university, and the cigarette manufacturers haven't yet made you their devoted customer, they almost surely never will. Okay? Adolescents, self-conscious and often thinking of the world as watching their every move, are vulnerable to smoking's allure. They may first light up to imitate glamorous celebrities, to project a mature image, to handle stress, or to get the social reward of acceptance by other smokers. As always with correlations, the traffic between friends' drug use and our own may be two-way. Our friends influence us. I mean, that's just reality, you know? You ever heard birds of a feather flock together? I mean, our friends do influence us in some way. Social networks matter, but we also select as friends those who share our likes and our dislikes. So, what do the findings on drug use suggest for drug prevention and treatment programs? 3 channels of influence seem possible. Educate young people about the long-term costs of a drug's temporary pleasures. That is the first thing drug programs need to do, is to educate young people on the long-term costs, the pros and cons of everything. What are the long-term costs of a drug temporary pleasures? Also, these programs should help young people find other ways to boost their self-esteem and discover their purpose in life. That's why you see a lot of programs have self-esteem workshops for teens, because with a high self-esteem or boosted self-esteem, I mean, that could, really propel youth into the next level of fulfilling their life's purpose. I mean, it is what it is. It's true. Folks with low self-esteem are more susceptible to follow peers that are into no good, whether it's drugs or other antisocial type behaviors, okay? And the third thing that drug prevention treatment programs need to do is to attempt to modify peer associations or to inoculate youth against peer pressures by training them in refusal skills. That's right. Refusal skills just means, basically just say no, but it's a little bit more than just say no to drugs, It's saying no, but also teaching them how to cope with the backlash, because there may be some backlash by not joining the in crowd, in regards to isolation or bullying or what have you. So it goes beyond just saying no to drug. It's also teaching the teens how to cope and how to transition from that peer group to a more adequate peer group. People people rarely abuse drugs if they understand the physical and psychological costs, feel good about themselves and the direction their lives are taken, and are in a peer group that disapproves of using drugs. That's important to know. Again, friends who belong to groups of other friends that are anti-drug, that disapproves of drug use, most likely won't do drugs. So these educational, psychological, and socio-cultural factors may help explain why 26% of the U.S. high school dropouts, but only 6% of those with a postgraduate education report smoking. So, in other words, they did the research and found out that 26% of high school dropouts, used these substances, and only 6% with a postgraduate education. All right, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. So this ends our discussion on drugs and consciousness. For today, this is Dr. Bev Knox, your psychology exam study buddy. We just completed episode 8, all about drugs and consciousness. Now, in our upcoming episode 9, we're going to cover actual questions and answers from your psychology exam, from an original psychology test bank. You are so very welcome. All right? Okay, so I'll see you soon.